Did you know that over 60% of developers use Spring Boot in their projects? You might ask why. It's very simple. It simplifies the work and allows you to launch an application in just a few minutes. In this video, you will learn how to create your first Spring Boot application and experience the full power of this framework. For a newcomer in the world of Java frameworks, it often seems incredibly difficult to get started. Endless XML configurations, server settings, library integration, it's all daunting. But Spring Boot solves this problem. It removes the complex settings, automates the process, and provides ready-made solutions. Let's be honest, it's like a magic kick for your project. And today, I'll show you how easy it is to get started. So, let's start by creating a project. Let's go. To Spring Initializr, the link will also be in the description. So, we choose the Maven build tool, Java is selected, everything looks great. I think we won't touch Spring Boot. This version works for us. Here we'll change it to JavaRangers. You can change it to your own, and our name will be FirstRingBot. So, version 23 works for me. Everything looks great. For dependencies, we need web. Here we add the dependencies. We'll also need Lombok, and I think that's enough for now. Click on Generate. We download the archive, and then we unpack the archive in the folder where all your projects are located. It's preferable that it makes things easier for you. After that, we open our project. So, our project has loaded. And what do we see here? SRC Java. This is for the code. Here we write the main code and the resources for configuration. And we also have pom.xml where we can see all the dependencies. Right now we have starter web, Lombok, and starter test. So let's write our first controller. Here we'll create a package controller and let's say a hello controller. We add the REST controller annotation so that we have a REST endpoint. Next we add the get mapping annotation. Here we specify the path and we'll write hello. Then we'll write what will happen. String say hello. Return hello user. And now we'll see how this works. So let's run our application. So our application has started and it's running on port 8080. We go to this link and type in hello. We definitely need to use get for post money because we made a get request. And here we have a get mapping. We go to our local host, which is localhost, port 8080, and navigate to the path hello. We see hello sent, and our message hello user has been displayed. If we make a mistake here, we'll get a 404 not found. Hello, great. Now you see how easy it actually is to do this. Just like that. Literally with a snap of your fingers, and everything works perfectly. 404 not found, hello there. Now you see how this is actually relatively easy to do. Just like that. Well, literally with a snap of the fingers and everything works perfectly. And now let's add a bit of realism, since in most cases you'll be working with a database. In this particular example, we will connect MySQL. Let's see how this is done step by step. And you can find out about how Spring Boot was created, its main modules, and who actually created it by following this hint. Well, or the link in the description. Since we have a Maven build tool, let's go to the Maven repository, type in MySQL, and find MySQL connector.j. For example, the latest version. Then we can calmly copy it and add it here in the dependency. I think we'll remove this like this. Let's update. After that, we need to go into properties. Let me specify everything that needs to be here right away. Here, we need to specify the name of our database after this. Specifically, I have this SDB. After that, we specify the username and the password, which is usually root. Usually it's root, and we specify the password. After we've written everything down, let's create a new package here. Let's call it entity. And let's add a user here. Before we add the annotation here, we need to add one more dependency. Let's go in and add Spring Boot starter data JPA here. We choose the latest version and download it calmly. Let's add it. The POM file. Let's take it. We also need to stop the Spring Boot application. It will kind of work, but it's better to stop it. Now let's add the entity annotation here. After that, we define the fields that will be in the database. Let's say this will be a long ID. We will have a string username and we will have a string user. And we'll have, here we set the ID adaptation, definitely, we can't do without that at all. And we add the getters and setters. Also, let's not forget that we need the ID to be generated. So we set generated value here, strategy, and we'll set auto here. Great. We have a user that will be in the database. That's good, that's great. But we need to somehow connect to the database. The repository will help us with this. Let's create a repository package. Let's create user. We have an interface. It extends from the GPA repository. First, we specify the entity, and second, we specify the ID, in what form the ID is. Here, we don't need to write anything, meaning all the conditional queries are already there. You can customize it here, but in our specific case, we don't need that. After that, let's create a package service, and here we'll create an interface. And here we'll also create an interface. This will be our user service. Great. Here we will define the service methods for user. This will be user. Get user. He will definitely accept himself along it, and we will do the same. But we need to somehow register the user, add them. This will be voided user. In this specific case, we are placing the user here. I often use DTO entities to protect data. If you want to know more about this, write in the comments and we'll go over it. After that, we'll create a package service impl, and in it, we'll create user service impl. We implement the user service in our system accordingly, in a manner that aligns with our goals. We implement the methods. Great. Before that, we also need to add the service annotation here. Here we add private final to the existing code for improved functionality and better encapsulation. User repository. We add the auto-wired annotation, and here what we do is user repository.getReference by ID, and we add the ID here. Everything looks good here. It gets more interesting with user repository.save. User repository.save user. It's that simple. After this, we move to package controller and create a new controller. We'll call it user controller. Here we also specify REST, iREST controller, and we will have user here. We have post mapping, add, public, void. Let's do it like this. Public string add user. Public void. Let's do it like this. Public string. We add user here. Before that, we write request body. And what are we going to do? We don't have a service here. Private final user service. It also asks us for a constructor, and it's all very simple. All logs constructor. After that, what do? We add user here. Before that, we write request body. So what are we going to do? We don't have the service here. Private final user service. It also asks us for a constructor. And it's all very simple. All args constructor. After that, what do? We need user.service add user. Great. And let it return a string hook. Next, we will have get mapping. And here we will write get mapping. Get public user, get user by ID long ID, and we return user service get user ID. Great. Find and return the user service, find the user somewhere. Great. Now we have two controllers for adding a user and getting a user. Let's run the application. Great. Let's go to this path. Add, post. Authorization is not in the authorizations. Body. The body will be in JSON format. And what are we doing? So right now I'm going to lower it a bit so it's more visible. Here we specify the username. Let's say this will be, well, I'm Victor. And we will specify the password. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, a comma is needed here. After that, we'll click the send button and take a look. Status OK, which means everything went well in theory. So, How are we going to check this? Actually, it would be good for us to add a controller to get all users. So let's do that. Let's stop the application user controller and also make a request get mapping, get all public, list users, get all users. So we're not sending anything such as data or information in our system. And what are we doing, for example, in this context? As you can see at the moment, right now, at this point in time, return user service. And what are we doing? We also need to add list user, get users here. Something like all. That would be better. And so we do it like this. It immediately tells us that we have problems because we don't have the implementation of one method here. We're adding it. List off, but we don't need that. What are we doing? User repository find all. We go here and write user service get all users. But here we simply just basically do a return. Let's start the application. Let's copy it right away. Let's copy it like this. And we definitely need a get request. Here is our user. And this is a list. We now know that our user has ID 1. What can we do? So we checked everything. We got all the users, but there's one but. Here, I made not exactly a mistake, but this method that is used in getUser won't work for us. It will work, but with some caveats, because it works a bit differently than the method I'm about to use. In simpler terms, if we just insert everything as it is now, we'll get an error. What do we need to do? It's all very simple. We're removing this method, let's do it like this. We're calling not getReference by ID, but find by ID, and putting the ID here. But something's not right. Why is it highlighting it in red, saying there's some kind of error, some kind of problem? It's very simple. Find by ID returns an optional. We wrap this in an optional and there are no problems. In simpler terms, if there isn't such a user in the database, we'll get an empty object, meaning it will be empty. There won't be anything inside, and that basically works for us. What's next for us to look at? Here we have an optional. Everything is good, but it's not all smooth sailing. Here we have user. We also create an optional user and there are no problems. Let's run it and check. Let's open Postman. Here we have the request get1send. And here is our user with ID 1, username Victor, password 12345. Yes, we can get information about the user here, so we can manipulate that information, so to speak. Create a method that will retrieve this user and, accordingly, change something in it. But basically, we've covered the main points here. Post mapping and get mapping. Get mapping is used to simply get information from the database, and post mapping is used to send it there. If your project requires security, meaning you need to implement login, password, and so on, here's a hint. Go ahead and check it out, or there will also be a link in the description below the video to our video on Spring Security. If you need to connect logging to your Spring Boot application, we have a series of videos here on the tip or link in the description. Also, if you need to deploy your project, for example, on AWS, you can check out our video. Here, please, you can find our video in the hint, or there will be a link in the description. So let's summarize. Today you learned how easy it is to get started with Spring Boot, created your first application, and saw it in action. Automatic configuration, easy dependency integration, and rapid development. That's why thousands of developers around the world choose Spring Boot. I'm sure this is just the beginning of your journey. If you have any questions or want to share your experience working with Spring Boot, feel free to leave a comment. And to not miss new videos, subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, and see you in the next episode. Bye.